Hello everybody and welcome along to a brand new video where today I'm going to be looking back at episode 4 of series 11 of Doctor Who this year, Arachnids in the UK. Or is it just Sheffield? So yes, this is the 4th episode of the series, once again penned by Chris Chibnall, the showrunner, bringing us back to present day Sheffield, just 30 minutes after we left Sheffield at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, episode 1, which I thought was quite nice, just way to kind of tee it up, where usually like it's accidentally been a year or accidentally been a really long time or just has been a few days. I thought it was quite a nice idea that sort of finally the Doctor actually got the time travel perfectly right, and it was only 30 minutes after they left. I thought, yeah, just something a little bit different that they don't normally do in Doctor Who. I thought that was quite nice, and just kind of give that perspective to the companions of, we've been on so many adventures and feel really tired out and everything, but actually we've only been away for half an hour. It's been no time at all. I thought, yeah, I just thought that was quite a nice little thing in the episode. And to be honest, with this story, I really enjoyed it. First time round, I was a bit tired when I watched it and didn't really, I think, take it in fully. But having literally just watched it 5 minutes ago, finished watching it 5 minutes ago for the second time, I really enjoyed this episode. It really kind of felt like it skipped along at quite a good pace. There was lots of wit in the script, lots of little sort of comedy lines which gave it a sort of lighter feel at times, but also an interesting plot and quite a nice sort of resolution as well. So I thought, actually, overall, it was a really good story. So first off, looking at the sort of plot itself, I really like this idea. I think it's quite a nice twist that actually there's no aliens in this episode. There's no real villain almost in this episode. It's all kind of happened by accident, really. These spiders that have sort of been converted by toxic waste into humongous ones and have had all their sort of what they're meant to do screwed up and everything, so they're attacking humans and everything. I thought that was a really clever idea, obviously nicely intertwined with the whole Robertson having built his hotel on top of this toxic waste, or sort of this wasteland, with all the toxic waste from his companies being dumped in. So it was all kind of linking back to him. Also this woman who does the spider experiments causing that as well, and just the two things combining, creating the villain sort of the episode, I thought was a really nice kind of twist. It wasn't anything alien, it wasn't really what you would have predicted it would be at the start of the episode. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it and think it was actually done quite well. And I think also kind of helps with the whole, because what the problem has been sometimes with doing Doctor Who in London, for example, is why do aliens always invade London? If this had been an alien spider, then it would have been another, oh, why are the aliens all, like 2 aliens in the space of a couple of days have invaded Sheffield? Would have seemed a bit weird. So I thought it was actually quite nice that you're kind of breaking that sort of slightly, a thing that's happened in Doctor Who in the past that isn't really makes a lot of sense, that aliens just randomly go to Sheffield, always go to Sheffield. I thought it was quite nice that actually, yeah, there was no alien threat this week. It was nothing to do with that. It was just about a series of accidents happening, really, and series of sort of Robertson trying to make lots of money by doing slightly dodgy things, and it just all kind of going wrong. So yeah, I really enjoyed the plot. Now, of course, the main guest star this week was Robertson, played by Chris Noth, who I believe is quite a famous actor. I mean, I haven't really heard of him very much or what he's been in, but apparently he's done quite a lot of stuff. I know it was very hammy, his performance. There's no denying. It wasn't quite Horns of Nimon level ham, but it was fairly hammy and a bit over the top and full of comedic lines, and that was the character he was meant to be. But I did really quite enjoy his performance, and I thought it really did just add a kind of lighter touch to the episode. And he had lots of funny lines. Yes, he was meant to be a little bit like Donald Trump. There's no denying he was meant to be a kind of caricature of Donald Trump to a large degree, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I really just found him quite funny. And obviously he's kind of at the centre of everything going wrong because he's a greedy businessman who wants to make loads of money. And he's caused all these the spider problems, but actually he's a ruthless, horrible man as well. And I just really enjoyed his character sort of throughout this story, even despite the hamminess of his performance. I also enjoyed all the main characters in this episode as well. As usual, of course, Jodie and the companions are probably going to do a good job, but I think what was good about this episode in particular, Yaz had a bit more to do. We met her family, we sort of got involved with them sort of interacting, and then Yaz getting a bit more involved with the Doctor. It very much feels like the Doctor and Yaz have been paired, and Ryan and Graham have been paired to a large degree. And I think that's quite nice, and it kind of creates kind of situations with them a bit more, and kind of means you're kind of covering, it becomes 2 sort of people to cover almost because they're in groups rather than 4 separate characters. So that's quite nice. And yeah, I was pleased that Yaz had a little bit more to do in this episode, and that we met her family. I think that was quite nice, just kind of grounding her a little bit more. and giving her a bit more backstory and sort of helping to understand her as a character and develop it a bit more. I think that was really nicely done in this episode, and definitely one of the strengths. Jodie was wonderful as always, really sort of bringing out the usual quirkiness and fun of the Doctor, really sort of in an entertaining and enjoyable way. But she just, like when she's in Yaz's house, just randomly wandering around, looking at everything, spouting nonsense constantly. It's just such classic sort of doctory thing to do, which I just thought was kind of slightly comedic, but really, really entertaining and enjoyable as well. I think Graham was one of the highlights of this episode, only in small bursts, but was one of the highlights of this episode. The scenes where he went back to his house and sort of was having the memories of Grace, I thought was such sort of fantastic, but such moving scenes as well, with the music that sort of played in behind it as well. You really, really felt the sort of emotion of Graham in those moments of him really just having those sort of heartbreaking memories of Grace and realising that he's never going to see her again, and using that, initially the sort of out of focus shots of Grace and then the couple of actually in focus shots at the very end of the episode, I thought was really, really, really excellently done. And perhaps after Bradley Walsh, she did such a fantastic job of portraying the character in that moment and portraying the sort of emotion and the feeling of pain and loss. It really was one of the highlights of this episode, was how good those few scenes were, and how emotional and heartbreaking they are as well. I really thought it was fantastically done. I think maybe the only character who was less well served in the episode was Ryan. He didn't really have a huge amount to do other than the sort of generic companion role. There are a couple of moments where he sort of had that letter from his dad, and his dad trying to almost invite Ryan back into the family, but Ryan's like, no thanks, you've left me for years, I'm not going to have you. But that felt like that was the only really significant thing that happened relating to Ryan in this episode. He very much was just kind of there, involved in the plot, but didn't really do anything this week. But that's fine, that happens in some weeks. Like, they can't have everybody focused in every single episode. I think one of the other kind of, I guess, problems of this episode was having so many main characters, I think, because obviously you added in Yaz's mum, you added in Jade, this from the uni, and Robertson into the main cast, and essentially, well, the whole time we were in that hotel, you had 7 main characters. Trying to give even amounts of dialogue and character sort of development and everything to 7 characters is impossible in the space of 20 minutes. And so I think that's why kind of Jade maybe, and to some degree sort of Yaz's mum, got a little bit left behind in developing them as characters and really understanding a bit more about them. They were very much kind of not purely plot devices, but there was a lot of kind of, particularly with the uni, with Jade from the uni, her very much giving a lot of exposition and sort of giving information about what the spiders are and the work she'd been doing, and kind of giving us fun facts about spiders. It felt like a little bit of at times as well, where maybe they could have explored her as a character a bit more rather than just using her to kind of forward the plot a little bit. But that was always going to happen when you had 7 main characters, and with Robertson being the dominant guest main character, I think it's fair to say. So that was always going to be the challenge, and it didn't quite work, but I don't think it's a sort of major problem with this episode. Certainly I think with Yaz's mum, and hopefully sort of Yaz's family as a whole, that they reappear later in the series and we get a bit more kind of development of their characters, a bit more sort of insight into them and that sort of family. I think that would be quite nice to sort of bring them back. It would seem a little bit weird, I think, almost, if they're in this episode and we suddenly don't see them again for the rest of the series. So I'm pretty sure that they'll come back later in this series. And overall, it just made for a fantastic story. I think all the elements really sort of clicked this week, were really just worked together, with the whole main cast really firing fantastically. The guest, certainly Robertson as a guest, being, in my opinion, really, really enjoyable, and a good plot as well. Just created a whole really, really good, fantastic story. And I also really, really enjoyed the sort of ending of this episode, those final few scenes in the TARDIS, where it feels like we've gone sort of full circle. We've kind of reached almost the end of this first arc of the series, of these 3 sort of friends getting swept off their feet by the Doctor, accidentally being sort of taken into time with them, having to get back home because they want to get back home, and then actually realising they don't just want to stay at home, they're bored of their normal lives. Graham certainly has nothing else for him on Earth anymore, and so he wants to just go and travel the universe, and Yaz and Ryan want to see more as well. And it's just a great kind of development of their characters through this sort of 4-episode arc, from people who didn't really want to get involved with the Doctor at all to start off with, to now they can't leave. They want to go off on brand new adventures with the Doctor. I think that's was sort of fantastically portrayed at the end of this episode, sort of showing how much they've changed as characters, as we saw through a lot of this episode, and as they developed through the past 3 episodes, and reaching that point now where they're adventurers, they want to go off and see the universe, and how happy the Doctor is to see that as well, that they're not just there by coincidence, there by accident. They are going to be, for the coming episodes, there because they want to be there. They want to travel the universe and see amazing things. And I think that's a fantastic that we've reached that point with these characters now, where we really have got a proper TARDIS team who want to be travelling the universe together and fighting aliens and monsters and sort of fighting the good fight and everything like that. So I thought that was really, really fantastically done in these final few scenes. And you just see the joy on the Doctor's face as well at the end. When we saw that kind of moment early on in the episode where it seemed like she was going to have to say goodbye to them before being invited to tea, that was a fantastic moment as she sort of, her kind of face just sort of perks up massively because she desperately wants to have these friends and to be with them, and sort of seeing that opportunity that it might go away, you could see how kind of sad she was. And then at the end of the episode, still kind of worried they might not want it, and sort of being assured that they're accepting the risks of this. Because what you've got to bear in mind is when we kind of think about the Doctor's timeline, from the Doctor's point of view, it's been maximum a week since she sort of regenerated, and since we saw Bill and Clara and Nardole at the end when it was back in Capaldi era. That's only been a week in the Doctor's timeline, which is nothing. And so she's still very, very consciously aware of the sort of pain of loss and everything like that from the previous companions and having to say goodbye to them. And so I think that that's kind of almost still in her thoughts as she's kind of having to assure her new friends that, yes, I really, really want to travel with me, but you've got to remember the risks as well. And so, I don't know, maybe that plot point will be picked up later in the series of the sort of travelling with the Doctor's dangerous, maybe one of them will get killed, who knows. But I thought, yeah, overall those scenes at the end were fantastic in the TARDIS. So overall I really, really enjoyed this story. It was probably my favourite episode of the series so far. I think it just had all the ingredients to make a fantastically enjoyable story. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What did you think of it? Do you rate it as highly? How would you rank your first 4 episodes of the series? What's your number 1 and what's been a little bit lacking from this series so far? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I just wanted to say a huge thank you for 4,000 subscribers. That's absolutely crazy. I can't believe I've hit this mark. But let's keep pushing on. Let's aim for 5,000 now. So if you're not already, hit that subscribe button down below. Remember to hit that like button if you are enjoying this video. And I will see you again very, very soon for another one. Goodbye.